which I don't represent their opinions either when I'm here. This is just me. So for those of you that don't know me, I've been building and looking after Salesforce systems for the last 10 and a half years. Before that, I was building, looking after systems in other technologies for about 10, 11 years. So I've been around the block. And in that time, so I started off on a help desk, and then I kind of went on to do other things. And in that time, I've seen lots of systems. I've seen lots of systems succeed. I've seen lots of systems fail. And the difference between success and failure is not how great the interface is. It's not how elegantly programmed it is. It genuinely is always about adoption. But somehow, for some reason, adoption is always a thing you do after you've finished your system. And I think that should be the other way around. If it's the most important thing you do, it should be the first thing you do. So this talk is really, so normally if I do a Salesforce demo, I do live demos, but this is all about the stuff you do before you start going into Salesforce. This is all about, what you do before you even bought Salesforce or got any licenses. Yeah, it's about how you design and set up your system. So that being said, what does adoption mean to you? Anyone kind of like have opinions on what adoption means? How do they know when something's been adopted? Getting people to log in. It's funny you should say that. So this is typically what people mean by adoption. Are people logging in? And I think we've all seen users logging in, but are they doing anything when they're logged in? So then you would go on to the next thing, right? You would say, okay, well, are records being created? There you go. Well, records are being created, and I can report on that, I can measure that, but are they the right records? Are they the right way? Or, do we have compliance? Do we have good data quality? So then we start going into something a bit more exotic, like is Salesforce being used in the way that we intended it at design? Yeah, but is the design right? Yeah, are we doing things properly? So I think that Salesforce adoption is about saying, is Salesforce being used to support and improve your business processes? And all that other stuff, like is it being used in the way that is intended? Well, if you've kind of intended, if you designed it in a way which improves your business processes and supports your business processes, then yes, that's what's going to happen. And you're going to have records being created to do that, and people are going to log in to do it. So having said that, where do we start? What's my first principle? So start with success criteria. Now, if you're not a project manager, you don't know the project management jargon, essentially what I'm talking about here is saying that every project, whether it's an IT system or going out to get coffee, should have objectives. Yeah, you need to have some sort of objectives. We all have objectives in our work life, and with your objectives comes your success criteria. How do you know that those objectives are being met? Yeah, and if you've got those things, if you've got objectives for your overall project, and you have your success criteria, then you know where you're going to be working towards. So, as usual, objectives are smart, and they're measured by your success criteria, and they give your projects and everyone working on a project a consistent set of things that you're working to achieve. So I'll give you some examples of objectives from projects that I've worked on and met with various degrees of success. So the first one was provide a guided experience for salespeople. And there, you're kind of going, well, how am I going to measure that? How do I know that I've succeeded? And you kind of go, well, yeah, it's kind of difficult to do that on an adoption dashboard. I can do it, but then I have to survey my salespeople and say, you know, is that giving you the right experience? And then adjust from there, if that's my first objective. Increase visibility of potential sales to PMO and technical delivery teams. The reason I had this as an objective on one of my projects is because we had very technically complex systems involving lots of engineers, lots of project managers, and a salesperson made a sale and called PMO up and said, oh yes, you're booked in. I've made the sale, you're booked in to go there on Thursday. And I was like, this is on Tuesday afternoon. Didn't go down very well, and then we were kind of went, okay, yeah, we need to do something about this to try and get that visibility. It was an interesting project in as much as when you then start looking at how do we know we've succeeded, we just stopped getting those reports of, oh, you know, we can't deliver on this thing because salespeople aren't communicating with us properly. Increase the number of customer services per day without reducing inequality. And there's all sorts of ways that Salesforce can help you do that, but how do you know that you've done it? Yeah, in a pre-Salesforce world, you need to do some measures which your old system may or may not be able to provide you of how many customers you're servicing. You need to do a good comparative CSAT score and so on. Yeah, and some of these things are like improve on what the old thing did. Means that you have to get some data out of your old thing before you can even go ahead and do stuff in Salesforce. This is one of my favorite projects, which was to provide a mobile experience for care workers. And, you know, it's a nice, easy thing. You kind of go, are you coming into the office as often as you used to or not? Are you able to do it on the tablet? This is before field service was available. So I think this project would be a lot easier now than it was at the time. But you know, it was it was fairly easy to measure. And I think one which we're all familiar with, use real-time reporting to drive sales meetings. And the first time and the second time, and I think the third time I had a project like this, you know, you just turn up to those sales meetings and see it in action and kind of ask the questions, is this working for you? You know, do we need to make some adjustments? Or what is that PowerPoint doing there, for goodness sake? Yeah? So, you know, I gave you a dashboard, God damn it. Yeah? So these are kind of projects that I worked on, and you can see how, you know, if you can have a project that has clear objectives and you have clear ways of measuring that you are, that whether you've met those objectives, if you care about something, then measure it. We've all heard that before, right? Then you've got some hope of delivering a good project. So this is kind of a very simple flow of how Salesforce, if you set up your project properly, can support your overall business objectives. So you have Salesforce there as a system, and that is supporting your business processes. All software, all systems support a process of some sort. That's what they're for. And then the other thing that supports the process is the people that use it. So if your Salesforce is aligned with the people that are going to be doing it, then you can drive your business processes. And then, oops, wrong way. And then that is going to hit your overall objectives. And then if you're doing it right and you have a good project, you will be meeting your overall business objectives. Whether that is to be the fastest company to 20 billion or, you know, do better customer service or whatever it is. Every company nowadays, almost all, will have an overall business objective, and you are always going to get better buy-in at C-level if your project is proven to drive or align to an overall business objective. Yeah, and when you have that, yeah, and you have that buy-in at the top, yeah, that means that people can start driving it down, and you get that adoption right from the top, and it trickles down to the bottom. So principle 2, solve a real problem. Now, I have a problem with a lot of those initial meetings because people kind of go, oh yeah, our problem is we do this. And you kind of go, but why do you do that? And they say, well, we've always done that, and we want to carry on doing it. So, but why have you always done that? So I think you get adoption where you focus on requirements to deliver on those project objectives. Yeah, if you start getting in requirements, and we've all only got so much time in the day, and only got so many dev hours. If you can say, right, okay, does this requirement not hit the project's objectives, then put it on the backlog. In fact, maybe it doesn't even go on the backlog. Maybe it just gets thrown out altogether because your project is there to do a thing. Yeah, and if you define what that thing is, and you're not hitting that, then just don't do it. The other thing is to find and address pain points. And I find that especially when you're replacing old systems, and people ask you to do the same thing in the same way, when you start saying, yeah, but what's the pain? What's the thing that takes time? What is it that kind of grinds your gears about that process? That's the point at which you can start saying, well, yeah, but we can do it that way, but you've said you've got this pain, yeah? And we can start exploring ways of doing things differently in a new world where we've addressed that pain. And when you start talking to people about their pain and how you can ease their pain, people start getting a bit more involved. And actually, this is where you start getting enthusiasm before you've touched the system. Before you show them Salesforce, you start saying, okay, yeah, you're looking forward to using Salesforce now, right? Because we're kind of telling you that in listening to you about your pain, and start looking at why you don't have to have that pain anymore. And also, question how features will be used in practice. There's a lot of great stuff out there about how you might use a feature. You'll probably see a lot of things from partners. Probably see people like me doing demos. And it's always like, okay, how am I actually going to use that? How are my salespeople going to use that? How are my service people going to use that? And you'll find that when you question that, you either say that's not going to work, or you say, I need to make some tweaks here. I need to make something different. And my last thing here is that you keep it lean. Yeah, I'm solving a problem. I have requirements to solve actual problems, and that's all I should have in my system. I shouldn't have extra bits and bobs because it's Salesforce standard, or it looked like a good idea, or because, hey, it looks cool, right? Yeah, you just go, okay, I'm going to keep the things in the system which address the requirements that I have, and nothing else in my system at all, yeah? And there's a few reasons to do that, yeah? But obviously, one of those is it makes it easier and simpler for people to use. The other reason is if you put in a solution and it doesn't actually address a problem, it eventually becomes a problem itself. Yeah, it's like, I have a thing, and I do this thing, And I want to get rid of it because, it's not really doing it. But people have started relying on it. It's like, well, you shouldn't be using this. But why is it in the system? And it becomes one of these. Yeah, it just becomes a white elephant. Another thing for you to support that you didn't have to support. Yeah? Hands up anyone that's had one of those white elephants in their system. Yeah, there's a few of you around. Okay? So the third thing is design for real people. Which I know sounds a bit like, well, yeah, of course, everyone I meet is a real person. However, if I show you this slide, yeah? Are we familiar with this slide? Have you seen this? This has been around for a while. So we start off with how a customer explained it. And I'll bet this customer is mum and dad, yeah? A responsible adult who haven't been on a swing for a while. Yeah, and they're saying, well, yeah, I've got 3 kids, so, this is what I want. And then project leader probably has no kids at all, goes, right, okay, well, that's what they want. And the analyst does this, and the programmer thinks, well, that's not going to work, so I'll do that instead. And the kids, the people that are actually going to be using it, that's all they wanted, a tire on a swing. Yeah? And if you imagine that the customer's paying the money, so those are the people that you talk to. But if you just talk to the kids, yeah, these are going to be, they're going to tell you what they want. Yeah, they're going to be able to express that for you. And, most of the people that are actually going to be using it, if kids are this smart, yeah, your sales, your service agents, they're going to be even smarter than that, and they're going to be able to tell you what they want, and they're going to be able to say, well, yes, we do have an XYZ system, and yes, we are supposed to do this, but you know what, we can't do that because of this reason, or we always do this. Or the classic, yes, I record this, this, and this here, and then I do this on a spreadsheet that nobody else knows about, yeah, because that system that the managers know about, yeah, it doesn't quite cut it, yeah? And it's at that point where you speak to real people who are doing real jobs, and you say, okay, how do I really solve your problems, yeah? And it's at that point when those people start going, yes, yeah, I'll bring out a bit of an amnesty on all those spreadsheets, yes? That's the point at which you get to, okay, this is what I want, what the customer actually needs. I see some nodding in the kind of the extra system, so that's good. I'm glad it's not just me. The next thing is removing friction. So all the cool kids talking about frictionless systems and frictionless UI and stuff like that. Good example of how removing friction has increased adoption is with credit cards. So now, when I was a lad, a credit card or a debit card involved taking your card and then putting it through a machine and then having to write it, and the cashier saying, because I got bad handwriting, saying, you're going to have to do this again because I can't read it, and so on. It was a real pain, and very few people use credit cards. Now, you just turn up, you go, bing, and you're done, right? So that's why now, in the UK, 70% of transactions are with a card, yeah? It used to be cash was really easy, yeah? Cash is now less easy than using a card, so more people use a card. They've removed all that friction that we used to have, and that's why we have increased adoption, yeah? Essentially, at the back, it's the same thing, right? But your UX, your user experience, is much, much better, and it's removed the friction, and that's what's going on. So, as a quick definition of friction, I've got these from miniphysics.com. If you have kids and you want to teach them physics, then go to miniphysics.com. It's a cool site. Friction is a thing, if you have a pushing force and you're pushing it that way, friction is so if you imagine that's a heavy box, friction is a thing that stops you from being able to push it forward. Okay? Yeah? Friction is, you know, and it's, if you imagine that you've got your Salesforce system, yeah, the surface area is your entire system, yeah, all the screens, and the friction is what's stopping you from going forward, yeah? And then, again, from mini physics, yeah, the smoother the surface, the easier it is to just glide over it. Friction isn't always bad, yeah? Sometimes, yeah, we need friction to stop, like in brake pads. And we have a few of those things where you need to have friction, yeah, in approval processes, validation rules. But maybe if you have too many fields. So every field, every validation rule, every click, every screen is increased friction in your system. But sometimes you need it, yeah? And it's about that balance of how much you need. The fifth principle, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And we've all heard that, and it's a great mantra, but how do you make it a reality? So the first thing you need to do is have a plan to remove access to your old systems. Yeah? How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? And if you're going to use Salesforce to do a job, and remember we talked about those extra spreadsheets that people have, if you're going to use Salesforce to do a job, whatever that is, whether it's sales or service or something else, you need to make sure it's all of that job, yeah? That there isn't an extra thing that it doesn't do. And yeah, that's my personal mantra. Spreadsheet is dead. Long live Salesforce. Kill them off. Yeah? So what have we learned? So our path to adoption. First off, we start with destination. So we set our objectives and success criteria, and that's what we use to set the destination of the whole project, and we share that with everyone so everybody knows where we're going. Then we go on to desire. When you start talking to people about solving real problems that help them, they want to use your system. Before you've, yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have when people come up to you and say, when's it going to be ready? When's it going to be ready? I want it now, yeah? Then you start going direction, yeah? You make sure that you are, that you're putting Salesforce in a workable solution that people, that you're validating that with people that are actually going to be using the system. And that's what you use to sense check and make sure that you're going in the right direction. De-friction, which I'm not sure is a word. But anyway, right, I wanted Ds. Right, okay, so you make it as easy as possible. And then when everything's in Salesforce, that's the point at which you are living the dream. And we've finished our path, and we can mark it as complete. Any questions? Hello.
Hi there. I suppose mine was a comment more than a question.
Okay, comments are welcome.
I really appreciated everything you've been saying there. That's really helpful. And I think I had an example. It may be a friction. I'm working with a company at the moment, and I'm putting their lead process into their lead. And they'd done it already. So one of their staff members had done it. Oh, sorry. Hi. So in their lead process, they didn't have it in the order in which the staff did it. So the staff would go to field 1, field 10, field 3, field 20.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just put it in the right order, and it was like a miracle to them.
Yeah.
So that would be my
that's right. No, that's a great example. And it's also a good example of de-friction, but also by talking to people that are really going to be using the system. You know, you discover those things. And it's at that point where you can say, okay, this is a pain point, and this is how I address those. And they can be as simple as just going, oh, you do it in that order. Well, let's put it in the order then. Yeah, no, that's a great example. Hello. Do you want a mic?
Following the examples with friction, I think every field which is not filled out on a page layout causes friction in your mind.
Yes.
Even if you never use it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. And I think that, you know, you're looking at it thinking, oh, I've got 100 fields and I only ever fill in 10 and I'm a bad person. And, you know, and if you're supposed to fill them in, then you are a bad person. But, you know, let's face it, most organizations don't need you to fill in 100 fields. I'm not joking. I have worked with systems that have had 100 fields, and you run field trip against them, you're going, yeah, these fields are never gonna get filled out. What are you doing? Anyone else? Hello.
And you spoke about the real users, right? And I agree with you. But what is your approach? What technique is how you find those real users? You know, and, because a lot of times, actually, you in a project you might be talking to proxies of those real users.
Yeah.
You know, but how do you get to them?
Yeah, and I think you need to interview people fairly carefully if you're talking to proxies. I think it's okay talking to a manager if they've done that job, but if they haven't done the job, you need to say, can I speak to someone who's actually done the job? Yeah?
No more time for questions, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks everyone.